Today we're talking about wellness and resilience. It's a unit on health, the individual and society. And before we start talking about illness processes, we need to have a good sense of what health is. So last week we looked at some definitions of health, some determinants of health, and beliefs about health. So today we're looking at this concept of resilience, which people, it's a fashionable term. Not necessarily a terribly useful term. It's sort of bandied around a bit. And wellness, which is another sort of buzzword these days. Everybody's talking about wellness, but not everybody knows terribly much about what they're meaning by that. So, getting right into it. And the machine lets me. So this morning we'll be looking at some concepts of resilience and wellness. In particular, we need to appreciate the centrality of a thing called, or concept, structure, construct, called developmental assets, as far as personal development goes. And we'll do some application of those ideas to healthcare contexts. So the difference between wellness and health. Health we explored in a bit of detail last week. You will recognise some of the emphasis here on freedom from pain and disease about the WHO definition that's been widely criticised. That's one of the reasons that wellness has come out as a counter, if you like, or a broadening of the idea of what we mean about health, that being more than just the absence of disease. Okay, so a multi-dimensional state of well-being encompassing bodily, mental, emotional, environmental, spiritual and community health. You'll be aware of those dimensions. I've mentioned them a couple of times. So 7 dimensions that have just been mentioned in that little definition, is breaking them down. And we'll go through each of these. Now, those of you who are a little bit observant may notice that there's 6 parts to the circle, but 7 topics. Why would one of them be missing? Just to avoid messing with your head, the one that's missing from on the right-hand side is occupational. There's the implication there that if you don't include occupational in your dimension of wellness, then you're implying that if you're taking care of all of these, then you're going to be okay at work. I'm not sure where this picture came from. I can't remember, but I just thought it was interesting. This one's only got 6 dimensions. It's missing the occupation. I don't know about you. I find that sort of thing fascinating. But why would they leave that out? Is occupational health somehow less important than any of the others? Maybe it does. Maybe if you're taking care of all of this stuff, then your occupational health is going to take care of itself. You think WorkSafe believes that? I don't think so. It's just an interesting omission from the picture. I think. Maybe I'm nitpicking. Let's go through this. Emotional wellness. Being able to feel and express emotions. Have you ever known anybody that's a bit flat or a bit, don't really say what they feel, don't really express what they feel, hold it in? Maybe they're a volcano and they erupt every now and then, and in the meantime, it's like something's rumbling, but nothing's on the surface. You know anybody like that? Yeah. Is it a good thing? I think it's rarely a good thing. Being able to express your emotions in your own way, in culturally appropriate ways, in accordance with your personality structure and so forth. It's a good ability to have. It helps us manage stress. It says something about what our self-esteem is like. It says something about what our relationships are. How well we are able to express our emotions. Is it innate or is it something that can be learned? It can take a long time. Yeah. Who thinks it can be learned? Yeah. Who thinks it's innate and it just is what it is? Who thinks somewhere in the middle? Yeah, okay. All right. There's no right answer to this. What do they say? No economy is on a dead planet. Can't eat money. Modifying your surroundings to help you achieve a healthy lifestyle. So we modify our surroundings. We're good at modifying our surroundings. We put bitumen down on everything. That's modifying our surroundings. Makes it easier to drive. You see, Sweden now has such efficient recycling procedures. They're running out of garbage. They're importing garbage from other countries because they don't have enough. Seriously. In healthcare, how might environmental wellness be played out? What might it look like? We have a lot of single-use products. Yeah. 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 Being aware of your living circumstances and is it a healthy environment that you're a part of day to day? We talked about a few of those last week. Some of the determinants of health are social. Some of them are environmental. Some of them have to do with lifestyle, with the way people live day to day. And let's be honest, some environments are frankly unhealthy places to live. There's been all sorts of research done on the health benefits of rural versus urban. And they both had their pros and cons. They both have their adherence. Some people will say, you know, if you can manage to live in a country environment, do so because it's much more healthy. Other people will say, no, people get isolated in the country, got much better social networks in the city, so on and so forth. Work arrangements. Who's worked in an open plan work environment? It's the latest, greatest thing. Not everybody likes it. Some people, yeah, think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, money manager. Why is being productive such an important thing? Who said being productive is important? Whose priorities is that? In the tubes this week, we'll be talking about values and how it affects what we pay attention to. Intellectual wellness, striving to improve your intellect and your creative spark, keeping active, reaching your potential, like any form of health or any form of wellness, people are not all going to reach exactly the same levels. Not everybody you went to high school with is doing the same sort of course as you now. Talking to school leaders here. But this one as well, making health decisions based on evidence. For some reason, we're struggling with that a bit now, these days. People are confused about what good evidence looks like, what a reliable source looks like. Experts are being dismissed as elitist. Don't know where to go with that. We talked about vaccinations, for example, last week. Oh, yeah. 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 I mean, I even heard a dietitian say, a while ago, basically reword something that I'd heard, online, and it was basically a populist view. I'm thinking, seriously, you're presenting this as hard evidence or as hard facts? There's a blurring of lines. What's credible and what's tested now. And I mean, in working in healthcare, it's such a subjective thing, a person's state of health. And, yes, everybody's the expert in their own lives, but you're not necessarily the expert in your own healthcare, because sometimes things go on that you need help. That's just how it is. And, the fact that I was talking with my wife about it this morning, the fact that measles is back and people are dying from it again, that should not happen. Yeah, it should be, but not always, not everywhere. Okay, occupational wellness, I do include it because I think it's a separate issue. There are things that happen at work that are not necessarily within your control. Sometimes what you do doesn't feel terribly meaningful, doesn't feel terribly enjoyable or rewarding. Who would become a nurse if you weren't getting paid for it? If everything else was the same, if you still had bills to pay, there aren't too many people that would do anything that they do if it wasn't having a secondary spin-off in terms of helping them pay their bills. Yeah. But it's not just about the financial rewards. We also have a need, going back to that slide, we also have a need to engage in work that is meaningful for us, that we find value in, and that we enjoy doing. So I could say to you, all right, you're being paid squillions of dollars to do nursing. I'm going to pay you the same amount of squillions to shovel manure 5 days a week. Who would do that? No. Because we don't value that as much as what we're choosing to do. It's not just about the money. It's about other things as well. And of course, we need to make use of what we're good at, our skills and our talents. Being physically well, that's probably what most people think of when we bring the term up. And this isn't everybody being an Olympic athlete. We talked about this a bit last week as well. It's about having adequate exercise. Who's heard of the 10,000 steps rule? I think I mentioned that last week. Yeah. Proper nutrition. Harder and harder to work out what that is these days, particularly when there's so much processed food around. And such reliance on that. And abstaining wherever possible from things that are going to do us harm. No surprises so far? There shouldn't be. This is all pretty fundamental. And it's the stuff that it's so obvious that it's easy to, yeah, I don't need to know this. I've already been there. It's good to have a framework around it. Your first assignment on reflecting on health beliefs might include some of these components. So it's all very well knowing it in yourself, but being able to express it is something else. Spiritual wellness. Not strictly about a religious belief, but what guides your life? What's important to you? What would you never do? What do you always do? If you had to nominate 3 things that are really important to you, that you could not live without, everybody would have something. Probably most people would have something that few other people had. We all, in other words, we all have core beliefs. It's worth being inquisitive and curious about that, not sort of saying, well, that takes care of itself. It takes practice. Sometimes people need, time by themselves or some downtime. Some people meditate. Some people drink coffee. Some people go to sports events. Some people don't think these things are important, and 20 years later, sort of turn around and think, there's something missing. There's something not right here. The number of, again, as a psych nurse, the number of people that I've come across, mainly in private practice, in private hospitals, suicidal because they've lost a job or their relationships are broken up or their health is in trouble. I've just picked one aspect in each of those cases. But you've lost your job, your life's over, seriously? Same with physical health. Same with your relationships. They're important, but they're not the be all and end all. And suicidality is a spiritual question. When you're saying that an important thing enough, something is that important to you that when it falls over, your life is not worth living anymore. That's a big call. Do people see how big a call that is? Nobody is an island. We need support from family and friends, and we need to give it. One of the things that we talk about in second year in the mental health unit is the value of altruism, the value of giving to other people, to take the focus off of yourself. And sometimes to achieve a health outcome, doing something for others is one of the best things we can do. Yes, it makes us feel good, and maybe we could see that as a selfish thing, but so what? Enhancing diversity, doing something different, mixing the routine up again, doing things that you care about. Super Tuesday today. I didn't cycle to work. I wish I had. It's a little bit far from me, frankly, for an 8:30 start. There's some ideas. Does that surprise anyone? Starbucks spends more on health insurance for employees per year than it does on raw coffee. You would think that coffee is Starbucks' core business. But who's going to make the coffee if the employees are sick? May also be an American peculiarity that a lot of health insurance in the US is employee or employer-based. Also, it's an interesting statistic. It's probably one of the biggest coffee distributors, if you like, around, spends more on health insurance than it does on its primary ingredient. Going back to a little bit about what we talked about last week. The thing that has an impact on an individual's health more than anything else is their behavior. So 50% of health is due to behavior, whether it's physical activity, level of, the health or otherwise of their nutrition, the use of psychoactive substances, and how they manage stress and access care. 20% on environment, 20% genetics, and 10% how well they can actually get into a healthcare environment when they need to. When I'm active and teaching, I get, without intentionally going for a walk, I get about 4,000 steps a day. So getting 10,000 is actually quite, you do have to be intentional about that. And people do try to take all sorts of shortcuts. People are surprised sometimes when they measure how sedentary they actually are to find out. But, wow, I thought I exercised more than that. And we think about it. Our lifestyles, we drive places, even places that are within easy walking distance. Oh no, milk's heavy, I'll drive because it'll be really heavy by the time I carry it back for a walk. People do give themselves a lot of exercise, beating themselves up for not getting enough exercise. and maybe the stress involved in that has a pulse quickening effect, but I don't think it counteracts what some corporations are very, very good at, which is getting very close. I don't think it's quite the same in Australia, but they're not far off it. McDonald's core business is not hamburgers; it's real estate. You've seen the movie? Yeah. That's been a truth for a long time. And 2/3 of the population being obese, regardless of how you measure it, people are eating too much and not exercising. 12% of all employers' healthcare costs attributed to disease are related to obesity. This varies from country to country. In Australia, I think it's lower, but the costs that's per person per year. Healthcare costs. You can see why I'm in mental health. We're a growth industry. The leading occupational disease of the 21st century, responsible for more days lost than anything else, is depression. It's not heart disease. It's not time off to get any procedures done. It's, I need a mental health day. And sometimes they'll even call in sick for it. These are massive numbers. And in Western societies, and you can include Australia in this, despite the fact that a lot of more people are working part-time, the hours worked per person per year are going up. To the point where places like Germany have said enough, 9 to 5. If you're not getting your work done in the 9 to 5 hours, your time management is wrong. Go home. They've essentially put in an overtime ban where a lot of industries don't get paid overtime anyway. So why work? Now, we all have days where we feel like that. I'm going to do something about my sound. Who's ever felt like that? Who feels like that now? Not yet? It's early in the week. You're okay. This morning, when the alarm went off, you say, really, do I have to do this again? It's only week 2. Quote from Ernest Hemingway about resilience. The world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places. Anybody ever seen those pots that have been fixed with gold? Because the gold is what holds it together, and it's a sign. Have you seen those? Yeah, they're really stunning. Yeah. And it's like they're more beautiful than the original pot, like before it got broken and repaired, because of the gold. And it's like that. The experiences, the difficult stuff that we've been through. On one level, we wish it had never happened, but on other levels, you are who you are because of them. And you probably, maybe sometimes, wouldn't have had it any other way. That, you know what, I regretted it at the time, I wished it wasn't happening, but I'm glad it happened because I wouldn't be the person I am now. Everybody experiences stress. Is she stressed? Are the people around her stressed? If she's in Safeway, is she embarrassed? Is she wishing the kid would shut up? How stressed was that mother in Moama last week? Now, without going into the details of all of that, that's a messy situation right there. You know, feeling yourself to be driven to do something like that. Some things are predictable. Some things happen to everybody. I knew I'm connected with an asylum seeker house where people on awaiting decisions are put up. And one day a few years ago, somebody was speeding along the road, and the car went up on the nature strip and ran over one of their kids. And I mean, they're asylum seekers already, and now they're victims of a road accident. Who needs that? It's the unexpected things that we often need to be resilient in the face of, because the predictable, accumulative stuff we can maybe learn to deal with. But when something unexpected happens, that's when we really get a sense of how well we're traveling. Okay, to use the road accident analogy again, you can have two people in the same road accident, in the same car, and I've seen this, or been made aware of this. One of them developed PTSD, the other one didn't. What's that about? One was more resilient than the other. Stress is a normal thing. Stress is not necessarily a bad thing. There are things that happen. Your first day of school, maybe your mother cried. Your first day of uni, maybe you did. I don't know. But we all leave home. We're all born. We all get old. Well, hopefully you do. 500,000 people today didn't wake up. Something to be thankful for. Unexpected events happen, but they all happen. They just happen unexpectedly. These aren't all necessarily good things, they're not all necessarily bad things. If your loved one had dementia or they were in a lot of pain, maybe their death is a relief. Winning the lottery presents problems. How do you spend the money? What do you do with it? It's a problem a lot of people would like to have, but you hear about people getting into all sorts of trouble after winning the lottery and saying afterwards, I wished it had ever happened. And things that we have no control over. And I think, like I said last week, there's stuff going on that we hear so much about these days. We are so connected. Something can happen on the other side of the world, and we know about it in 30 seconds. I don't know that's necessarily a good thing. So, resilience. Been bandied around a lot. Here's a few definitions. Being able to adapt positively to past or present adversity. Somebody said once, forgiveness is accepting that the past cannot be changed. A lot of people wish the past could be changed. Being resourceful and competent and having strategies that you can learn from experience and move on. Being able to grieve, good example. Let me think of other examples where your inner resources, your social competencies, and the strategies that your culture gives you enable you to get through an experience. Nothing in particular? Sometimes things happen when you're a kid that other people manage really badly or have bad consequences, where resilient kids will not have those poor outcomes. But can be defined as typical development. It can also be defined as a capacity to adapt in the face of challenging or threatening circumstances. Once again, is resilience innate or can it be learned? I think it can be learned. It can be. What's that?
It can be learned, but some people born more resilient than others. But you go back to
Okay, let's have a look at the framework. Just to be quickly, I think there are things that are inbuilt in a person, yeah. But yeah, yeah,
one becomes a drug addict, one doesn't.
Yeah.
And that both exactly the same. So it's not, wasn't that one born or that one? Even though I know you do it, it's still one part of that.
Yeah, it's one of the great unknown questions about, you know, why do two seemingly identical people turn out differently? Okay, same genetics, same upbringing. That's why twin studies are so important, because you get people with seemingly identical genetics brought up in the same environment, and then you compare them with kids that are brought up in a different environment. They're still twins. And you measure the differences, and things like the ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, longitudinal work like that. But, yeah, a lot of work done, an awful lot we still don't know. So you can talk about families being resilient, not just individuals. Capacity to cultivate strengths. I just need to shut that door. That's one that's been heard about a lot, the ability to bounce back from adversity. You do a straw poll, what people think adversity is. Capacity to bounce back, it comes up a lot. Or to rebound from adversity, strengthened and more resourceful. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you strong. So it's in the popular nomenclature, what we talk about, the way we understand things. It's in popular culture, the concept of resilience. The military stresses the ability to not only to bounce back, but to thrive under challenging circumstances. Some guy called Brigadier Corner. IBM talked about the ability of an organisation's business operation to rapidly adapt and respond. From business, the emphasis on rapidly. the importance of not being like the Queen Mary and taking too long to do things. Now, in a healthcare environment, they're often big organisations and change is slow. Dominated by the medical profession that is very conservative and change is slow. We have particular ways of doing things. We're told about a better way to do things, and change can be slow. They say that once you've stretched a rubber band, it never returns to its original proportions or dimensions. And people are like that. When you've been stretched, when you've been through this course, when you've been to the Lonely Mountain, to use a movie analogy, you will never be the same. And in anticipation of that, some people will say, well, I'd rather not go there. I'd rather not put myself through that. Some people sleepwalk into it. Who feels like they've sleepwalked into nursing? Some people say, bring it on. I need to change. I want to change. I've seen what change nursing brings around people that I care about, and I want that change for me. I want to be a nurse. Okay, knowing that who you will be as a nurse in 3 years' time is different to who you are now. Who's ready? A few people are not. So what helps you be strong under stress? What gets you through? What helps you bounce back? Cup of tea. Several cups of tea. Strong cup of tea. Okay, yeah. Knowing that it's not going to last forever. Sleep. Very important. Maybe not too much.
Yeah. It's not really fun to enjoy. I mean, after a big stress, you want to do something to relieve yourself from that stress, like go to a movie or.
Yeah, rewarding yourself, or what's called self-soothing in the industry. Yeah. Supporting yourself. Yeah, how? Okay, yeah, sort of using your social network. Yeah. Yeah. Also, we know this stuff. We all have strategies. We all know things. Sometimes what we think helps stops helping. And, that's when we can get into self-destructive behaviors, because, what used to help doesn't help anymore. We've covered some of those. A sense of humour is important, keeping things in perspective. What you're saying, that it's not going to last forever. There's a reason why professions like nursing have such black humour. Because we're dealing with stuff that the rest of society doesn't want to think about. Yes, we eat popcorn out of a bedpan. We put it through the pan flusher first. Make sure it's dry. I could go on. I could be worse. 8 traits, or traits, I guess to say, of families that have resilient qualities to them. Staying together, being connected, and connectedness is also outside of the nuclear family unit. Being adaptable, being able to change, being able to say, nah, it's only dinner. You can't get home? That's okay. It's only a power bill. Yes, it's $800. Oh my God, how are we going to pay that? And put food on the table. But it's only a power bill. We'll get by. cohesive, caring about the people that you're close to. You can't choose your family. Your family is who your family is. Yeah, but you have a lot of shared experiences. And being cohesive as a family is very important for resilience, being committed, having commitment to each other, spending time together. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. One of the languages that says to a person, I feel loved by this other person, is when they spend quality time together. That's number one for a lot of people. Respect. There's another book called Love and Respect that talks about, it's almost men are from Mars, women are from Venus type of thing, but it's not. I mean, it's much more sensible than that. But it does talk about gender differences and points up some findings that respect is actually more important than love for males. That if you feel disrespected, that's almost as bad for a man as a woman feeling unloved. And spirituality has been shown, again, to be an important component of resilience in families. All families have strengths. It may not seem like it sometimes. And sometimes the weaknesses or the struggles that a family has overwhelm the strengths that they have. Again, that family in Moaman from last week would struggle to identify any strengths in themselves right now. But there are things that we know we have, that we do well, that we are strong in. There might be areas that we think we could work on. And sometimes we have ideas about what we can do to change that. A guy called Walsh came up with some key processes in family resilience. First one is the belief system. Making meaning of what's happening. What are the implications of this? Maintaining a positive outlook in the face of it, and valuing spirituality. Being organised in a flexible, osmotic way, if you like. When John goes through osmosis with you, he will talk about semi-permeable membranes where things can get in and out. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So in much the same way as a membrane can be semi-permeable, family boundaries need to be semi-permeable as well. That people can leave and people can join easily, but not too easily. The people are aware that there's insiders and outsiders, so you get a boyfriend, he's welcomed into your family, you break up, then there's a sense that, oh, he's not around me. We move on. Being able to communicate. There's a thing about expressing emotions again, openly. There is a thing called high expressed emotion, which is not a hugely helpful thing, particularly when there's a blaming culture goes on within families. And there can be all sorts of problematic communication dynamics go on within families that don't really help. We need to be resilient in all 5 of those domains. And we talked about those. A lot of what we talk about physically is to do with the choices we make. Let's see how we go, how we're tracking. Oh, there we go. We're going fine. Perfectly fine. We need to be flexible. We need to stay active. Not necessarily crosswords. They've found that the common understanding that doing things like crosswords and Sudoku and keeping your brain active doesn't actually help much. What helps in things like guarding against dementia is things like novelty, learning a new language, learning a musical instrument, more than just doing things that used to be challenging, but you fall into a pattern of doing things the same way. You might be good at crosswords, you might be good at Sudoku, but you're not actually building up your neuroplasticity terribly much. Being socially connected, talked about this earlier. Having access to resources. It's interesting, just on that one again, it's interesting that people write less Christmas cards than they used to. I don't know. Maybe we spend more time with each other during the year on Facebook and so forth. But there was that suicide cluster in Berwick a few years ago, and one of the parents expressing surprise that he had 2,000 friends on Facebook. So why was he so lonely? Being able to problem solve without having huge dramas around it. Being able to deal with adversity. Having a positive or an optimistic outlook as opposed to a negative or pessimistic has been shown to predict better outcomes from a health point of view. Know what your values are. So we talk about 3 components to resilience. We talk about risks or risk factors. And from a health promotion point of view, you need to know these things. What is a risk factor? Essentially, it's something in your life that can make things worse. Okay? So if that's what a risk factor is, what's a protective factor? It can make it better. It can make things better. So when you see in the literature risk factors and protective factors, you know what we're talking about. And assets. Assets in the resilience literature is shorthand for a positive attribute or a strength. It's not about how much money you got in the bank. This is hopefully going some way to answering this question about the nature-nurture thing. There are external assets in a person's lives. There are 40 of them. I don't expect you to write these down. Search Institute in Minneapolis has done years of research on this and come up with this framework of 40 developmental assets that is the most strongly supported by the evidence framework for personal resilience. So support, the extent of support in a young person's life, 12 to 18 that the research has been focused around. The extent to which the young person is empowered. The extent to which boundaries and expectations, particularly high expectations, are modelled. And the modelling of constructive use of time. So external to the person this is talking about. Okay, so this is not the person doing it for themselves. This is what is in the person's environment. Okay. Then internally, what the research has shown is that you work as a family unit, as a community, on the external assets, then the internal assets will improve. And they are having a commitment to learning, having positive values, being socially competent, and having a positive identity. Now, everything in there, everything in that framework are positive attributes. The interesting thing is, what matters is how many of those 40 you have. If you're interested in this, look up Search Institute online. Doesn't matter which ones you have, just how many you've got. If you've got less than 10, you're not doing nearly as well as if you've got more than 30. And the predictive capacity in terms of protection from risk and fostering success, if you like, however you define that, is really quite striking. So, these are from some self-reports from young people. And these are pointing up areas that young people themselves feel struggles. There are struggles in their environment about my family communicating in a positive way, my school climate being caring, my parents being involved in my schooling, my community valuing me or seeing me as a resource, adults being good role models, and being able to participate in creative activities. All of these were rated by young people themselves as less than 30% on a yes/no basis. Does my community or does my environment include a caring school climate? 70% said no. Plus, I don't know if any of you can relate to some of those figures. Andrew Fuller, a school psychologist, may have gone around to some of your schools, is working on replicating the Search Institute database in Australia, and he's doing a resilience survey, looking at essentially this framework. Internally, the one that young people nominated as being done most poorly was reading for pleasure, which is interesting. Correlated very strongly with constructive use of time being modelled to people in their lives. I talked about protection against risk, whether it's problematic drug use, being involved in fights, illicit drug use, or underage sexual activity. Remember, these are 12 to 18-year-olds we're talking about. Looking at each of these, hang on. As the number of assets goes up, the incidence of each of these goes down. Statistically significant? I think so. Like I say, these results are striking. The more in that framework, the more positive responses that somebody has, the more positive attributes that somebody has, the more protected they are against those particular risky behaviours and others. Now, the flip side of that, this one's done slightly differently, but if you look at the left-hand bar in each of the groups, the graph's a little bit skewed, but it's basically the more, again, I've got to get a better graph than that. It's in line with how many assets somebody has and how likely they are to be in a leadership position, maintain good health, value diversity, and succeeding in school, which is the far right-hand one, the dark purple one. When we say succeeding in school, that's A's and B's. That's not just getting by. It's coming top of your class. So, are they protective factors in and of themselves? You could argue that. You could argue that. Here are some changes in reading, language, and math skills. According to the percent in the school reporting feeling safe or very safe. And again, you've got this straight line progression. You're safe, you feel safe, you learn better. It's classic Maslow. Reporting caring relations at school. Who felt your school was a caring place? Okay, not too many hands up. You don't count, you're too old. Doesn't apply to me anymore. I don't barely remember where I went to school. But again, you've got a straight line progression. The more caring people feel or cared for people feel, the better they do. Do you have high expectations of you in your school environment? The higher the expectations, the better you do. I don't know why this should be a surprise to anyone, but apparently sometimes it is. Oh dear. And again, if you're able to participate meaningfully in your community, if you feel valued by your community. Now think about a problematic group. Okay. What's a problematic group of young people in society? Okay, drug users. Let's go to drug users. Do they feel themselves that their participation in community life is valued by the community? No. Is that going to help? No. It's not rocket science. Give them something useful to do. We had a guy at school, I did a little bit of school counselling a while ago, and we had a guy, when the school cafeteria decided they're going to have a healthy menu, they got rid of all the chips and chocolate bars and soft drinks and said, no, we're going to go fruit juice and carrot sticks and all of these healthy choices options. He went down to the local milk bar, bought up all this stuff and sold it out of his locker at a markup and was making a killing until he was caught. And he was brought in. Now, this is the school that knows about this stuff. So you know what they did? Yes, they shut down his slight shop, but they put him on the school fundraising committee because he had a strength in that area. He knew how to make money. He knew what motivated kids, and he did brilliantly at it. And he didn't get alienated from the school environment. Do you think he did better in school as a result? Yeah. It was a win-win. Okay, take it the other way. The number of kids in school reporting sadness or hopelessness, the lower that number, okay? So a model for resilience, you have stressors, adversity, risks, interacting with factors in the person themselves and the environment. A disrupting event and some sort of reintegration back into normal life afterwards. Maintaining of homeostasis, which is balance. So you get through unscathed. You get through better off because you've learned from the experience, or you get through, but maybe you're damaged, or you struggle to get through. It's important to have relationships. We're nearly done. One of the most important things, I mean, there's a lot of talk done about, quality of teaching and particularly in a high school environment, NAPLAN tests and implications of those for the quality of teaching. School, what is it? League tables of schools. But what has been proven over and over to have stronger evidence than just about anything else of quality of teaching is the relationships between teachers and students. Who's got a teacher that you always remember? And why do you remember them? They were good at their job? They made it more fun than just facts. Yeah. Who else has a teacher they'll never forget? Yeah.
Also, they kind of you relate to each other. To the mean, you make it. Like you said, they make it fun. You can relate to them.
Yeah.
They make it relatable rather than.
Yeah. They're passionate about what they do. It's more than just teaching to the test. Yeah, and you do develop an affinity with these people. And it's interesting that there's a little bit of a myth out there that schools in socioeconomically deprived areas almost as a self-fulfilling prophecy do worse academically than schools in well-off areas. And what the resilience data suggests is that almost gets turned on its head. That sometimes we've done the resilience survey in schools in well-off areas and well-off schools where they have not believed the results. For example, about the number of kids in the school who believe it's okay or even a good idea to carry a weapon for self-defense. One of the questions that comes up. And the school community doesn't believe it. Our kids wouldn't say that, but they did. This is your own school's data. Students and teachers need to get to know each other in this adolescent group when so much is going on in a person's lives. A little bit more on the power of relationships. It's a fundamental thing. And the importance of relationships that cannot be overstressed is even to the point of saying, look, the funding is secondary. If the funding is massive but only lasts for a year or two, then you're not going to do as well as a program, and I'm using the word in inverted commas deliberately, that runs on the smell of an oily rag but continues. It's the continuity that's important. Yeah? You've got to have the relationships. So many schools, so many parents choose schools that have great programs that are visible, but bullying cultures that are invisible and damage kids. Children will work harder and do things for people they love and trust. Even odd things like adding fractions. It's important to stress that adversity can be a learning experience. Having protective factors internal to yourself, but also externally in the environment, social or physical environment, can help modulate what goes on with adverse experiences. And without protective factors, without those positive attributes, some individuals are more likely to cope in maladaptive ways. And just to finish off, two roads diverged in a wood. Yeah. Taking the road less travelled makes all the difference. Don't forget